Welcome, everyone, to the T-Rap Show with your host, Trapper Goldsmith, where we showcase elite athletes and sport individuals with their inspiring stories and rise to glory in their pursuit of everlasting greatness. Before turning pro, Warren Ward was regarded as one of the best amateur basketball players to ever play in Canada. Attending the University of Ottawa, he finished his career there as the second all-time leader in points scored for the university. He had 3 seasons playing in the NBL of Canada as well. He played professionally over in Europe. He also represented Canada at the 2011 Pan Am Games. It's not often you talk about Canadian basketball and not toss the name of Warren Ward around. And if you feel like he has a familiar voice, well, that's probably because post-basketball career, Warren continues to be a part of the game, and he has moved into a very successful role as a broadcaster and analyst for TSN Raptors. So today he's going to bring that personality that makes him so popular as a broadcaster. We're going to talk basketball, injuries, mental toughness, life after sport, and we might even talk about who the real GOAT is out there. So tune in. Cameras, lights, action. Let's get into it. Warren, welcome, man.
Oh, man, that was a great introduction. Thank you. I felt that.
All right. So you've been crushing it in your broadcasting role. Talk about how your daily routine now has changed from when you were playing full time.
Well, I work out less, eat a lot more. No, I tried my best to continue to stay as active as possible. Just with all the injuries I've had, I got to do that for my body, stretching, working out, running, things like that. And then just putting work first. So I do have a day job as well. I work for a very great company. I work for retention.com. So we're a new startup, loving my life here. It's amazing. And then at around 4 or 5 o'clock, I transition and I turn into a broadcaster. And I either head to the Raptors 905 arena, which is in Mississauga, or I walk up the street and I go right down to the Scotiabank arena and I call the game. Sometimes it's like 6 games in a week. And other times now it's like 3. And then, we're into playoffs now. So things have changed. My time is of utmost importance because I literally have to choose what I do. And there's so many things I could do, but now I literally have to prioritize. It's not as regimented as it once was, where I had practice at 10, practice at 6, and I have time off in between. Now I have tasks and things I have to get done. And then I go forth.
It's weird, hey? Like after sport, as an athlete, you have your sport and that's it. And we're a little selfish, a little greedy as pro athletes because you say no a lot. It's like, well, no, I can't. I have practice. No, I can't. We have a game. No, I can't. We're traveling. But then when you're not, it's like all of this opens up, and I often call it a buffet style, and we're trying a little bit of this and this and this, and our schedules fill up pretty quick. So what do you do? Like, physically, we're not training, but you got to stay up on stats. You got to stay up on kind of news and what's happening. What do you spend during the day? Like, when do you do that? When do you focus on that side of broadcasting?
So if I have, first of all, that's a good question. If I have 3 or 4 games that week, right, I will go ahead and spend most of my weekends or evenings, the times that I don't have games, I'll be researching for those, for those upcoming games.
Yeah.
I'll watch the team play usually the night before. I'm lucky. Like I have access to like full games and whatnot that I can watch of any NBA team. So I'll watch the game the night before.
Oh, very cool.
Quarter, half, whatever. And then I'll compare that to the stats. And then I'll pick and choose what kind of topic I want to discuss. So I'll pick up tendencies. That's really what I look for when I'm broadcasting. I'm looking for player tendencies, team tendencies, offensive sets that they run that have been successful. I'm looking for a lot of body language things, because there's so many things outside of the actual, there's a game within a game that you're playing. And every night it's going to be changed. So I'm looking for little things like that kind of separate me from other broadcasters. And I'm someone who I want to teach basketball when I'm speaking. I want to be able to send someone into not like a different place, but I want to send a little bit of a nugget and something that they probably didn't know or didn't see. And they go and, Google it. And a simple thing would just be, like a negative step. and a negative step would be when someone catches the basketball and instead of going forward first, they take a step backwards. So whenever you see someone shot fake, what's a tendency? They step back. Well, that's a negative step. And that wasted motion is a difference between you potentially scoring and beating your man or, them being able to cover you. So just little things like that, I try and teach and look for.
I swear I just watched a video on Kobe talking about that.
Yeah.
It's like, and as soon as you said negative step, I think it rang a bell. And he was like, when you see someone take that negative step, he's like, I know they're not shooting. He's like, I know they're not going to shoot. So, that's interesting. So when it comes to stats, Warren, like when you hear announcers, broadcasters spitting off stats, do you have you already studied that and kind of, I'm going to talk about these stats at some point during the game, or do you have like Google open and you're doing a quick search during the game? How's that work?
I rarely do it during the game. I usually have it all prior to. I have all my information that I want to bring up. So I'll look at like what the team does overall. So tonight we're playing Boston. I know for a fact they're going to be, that's going to be a tough one for us and the Raptors. Like they're playing a very good defensive team. So they have like a historically good offense in the NBA and a very good defense. So I'm going to look at like their rating and what they do well, whether that's rebounding, whatever the case is, and talk about those things.
Nice. And kind of what have you learned being in the booth versus on the court about the game?
Another good one. I think the main thing I've learned is that in order to be a very good and effective player, you need to be able to slow the game down in your mind. So when things are happening full speed, you got to be able to slow your mind down and see what's in front of you. Because that's how basketball's a game of mistakes, right? There's turnovers that happen all the time. So a lot of players, when they wonder, why a certain guy can't play and they got so many talented guys in the NBA. It's because of those little things separate you from being able to play and not. Like how well do you see things before they happen? Essentially, it's like playing chess. It's like you got to be able to really slow your mind down and speed your body up and be able to control that on demand. And that's a power, it's a real power. So
it's a superpower.
So I think those are probably the biggest thing. And when I was playing, sometimes I'd get so lost in the moment that I wouldn't be able to do that. But now that I sit up above or sit courtside and I watch the game and someone's dribbling the ball, I can see what I would do in those situations before they actually happen. And then when I'm calling a game, sometimes I'll say something and it's exactly what happens in the next play because I can see it better,
Yes.
So,
that's so important.
Yeah. They call that feel for the game, but I think that's just a principle and something you can use in life. Like you got to be able to see certain things before they kind of happen and, do something about it.
Okay, I like that. You mentioned you had to slow the game down. So what were some kind of techniques or tangibles for our younger listeners that you would do when you were playing to slow it down? And you almost would call it Zen or hyper-focused but what were some key triggers that you used to get there?
Well, as an athlete, I didn't do a good job of that. So I I can tell you what I would. Now it's easier because I don't play, but I think probably more importantly, one thing you can do is just, you got to stay in the moment. You got to like I whenever the game was tight when I was playing, I would think about the glory of, like hitting a game winner, or whatever. I would think about that instead of thinking about what I have to do in the very moment. So part of being able to think fast is, this may sound weird, but don't think at all. It's like you want to play off of your instincts. And within your instincts, you can pick and choose the times where, okay, this is my time to speed up. This is my time to slow down, but you want to be instinctual with your movements. And so that's the way I would do it. And then repetition. I think I was a repetition person. So I had certain moves and certain things that I would be very, very good at and very specific at. And I would play off of, whatever the defense would give me. I was a scorer. So that's how I was able to do it for so long, regardless of injury.
Yeah, just completely repetition. I remember my dad always telling me, he's like, Trapper, don't go through the emotion, go through the motion.
And there you go.
And just shut this down and just do it and not think about it.
Exactly. That's exactly what that's your dad's right. You stay out of the emotion. And that's what happened to me. Sometimes I'd get a little emotional when it comes to the sport and, in the moment so much that I'd forget about the task at hand,
So coming up, you went to the University of Ottawa.
Yep.
Now you were touted as a high rank high school player. Was there a decision there to go to Ottawa and not down to the States?
Big time. I mean, my parents, where they're like, I got to talk about them with this, where they're from. They were like education first. And, I was a late bloomer when it came to that. I started playing at 13. I was a soccer player all before that. So this transition with basketball happened quickly. I started to grow and started to get pretty good. But I was really skinny. And to be honest, I didn't have the biggest belief in myself at that time to actually go play D1.
Interesting.
It was an option, but it was like back in my day per se, like literally Tristan went to the league. Tristan was born in 92. I'm at 89. So that gap between the 89s and the 92s, after 92, everyone started going to the NBA. But, prior to that, going D1 was like far-fetched. The NBA was basically like me going to the moon.
Right.
It's not happening. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really have the support system and the belief that like this shit's possible. You know what I'm saying? So when funny enough, full circle, it almost happened, like that's why it's even funnier. But I was not highly touted, but I was one of the most recruited players in high school. But they were all local universities. I had them all, West, East, everybody basically here. But Ottawa was the only school that was downtown, one of the last schools to call me. And when Dave called me, he sounded like an American. And I was like, I just came back from the States. I had to, if I was going to go, I was going to have to go to a junior college. And that was in Wabash Junior College, which was the border of Indiana and Illinois, excuse me. So right at the border, like literally, you go one side, Indiana, you go on the other side, Illinois. I was going to go there for 2 years. And then I wanted my school was, I always wanted to play at Syracuse. I wasn't getting recruited there, but Indiana University had a lot of interest. So I wanted to go there. So they were like, if you come here for 2 years, we could get you into pretty much any D1 school. And I was like, cool. Me and my dad flew down. The school looked like, it looked like an elementary school, essentially. Like it wasn't a university at all. Like school wasn't very serious. The environment wasn't the best. So my family was like, my dad always told me, he's like, if you're good enough, they'll find you. You don't have to worry about that. You're good enough, they'll find you. So I said, okay, let's go to a better institution, a school that looked like it was an actual university. Let's go to a coach who, once I spoke to Dave and we sat down and we talked, and Dave came to my house maybe 4 times to recruit me and my family. My family liked him the most. I liked him the most. And he told me all the things that I had thought about myself that I could be, and I think that's important, when everyone thinks in their mind, and this is where I think doubt comes from too, is that we are, it's one thing to be like who you say you are, but it's another thing to hear other people tell you that and give you the, the reassurance. And he was one of the coaches that really said like, no, you come here, you'll play on Team Canada, like you'll have a chance of going pro. I can see that. I can see it. And I just was like, this is the spot. And at a young age, I made the best decision because I was a big fish in a small pond. And I didn't realize that until I was done. I became a name everywhere because of going there. If I did that in the States, I don't think it would happen. It would never have happened.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of powerful stuff in there, and belief. I've always said that like belief is the it's number one. Yeah. And sometimes I like how you said that, like you had a coach. Sometimes we have a coach or a parent that we borrow that belief from for a little while until we get it in ourselves. One of the movie King Richard and the Williams sisters, like, it blew me away as a parent seeing how early he instilled that they were going to be the greatest early on. Like, it was, he told them that every day. And well, guess what? A kid's eventually gonna believe that. And having that belief is, yeah. So, okay, this is good. So you went to university, your career started to really blossom there. But when did you know pro basketball was a thing, that was the route you were going to take?
I knew that pretty early. I made up my mind pretty early. I think I was 16 years old, and my dad made me write like a letter, not a letter to myself, but on a big piece of paper like this. He made me write down, I'm a good basketball player, I'm going to get better, and I'm going to be a pro. And I put that on my wall, and I read it every day at 16. And then pretty much from right then on, I knew. And then when I got to university, I was the first person in my university summertime, a lot of the guys would go home. And I said, no, fuck that. Or no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to stay here. Excuse my language. And then I'm going to.
Good. This is an adult podcast.
Okay.
It's raw. It's real.
I'm going to work out. So I met this guy named Alan Horton, and he used to come watch us play. And he goes, I want to train you in the summertime for free. And we became good friends. He's an older gentleman. He was a Poliquin specialist, and that's I don't know if you know Jim Poliquin, but he's a type of trainer. And he would follow his routines. He got me some supplements, and we worked out twice a day, every single day for the entire summer. And my first year, I went to University of Ottawa, $175. I came back the next season, 190, and I was dominating. All the senior guys I was stronger, I was more athletic, and I was ready. I was ready to go on. Like, after that second year, everyone knew whose team it was. It was me. I was next. There was a guy, Josh Gibson Bascombe. He was one of the reasons why I went there. 6'4" point guard from Toronto, very, very good player. He was the all-time leading scorer in the school until Johnny broke that record. And then after my second year, I knew there's no one in Canada who could touch me. And I said, I believed my dad. I said, if I just keep getting better, I'm gonna have an opportunity to go. And because of just my size, and there wasn't too many people who were doing the things I was doing or could do. So, but I worked my tail off for it, and I got better. I put a lot of time in, and that was the routine every summer. I stayed in Ottawa, I would go home. I stayed and I worked. I had my fun, but I also worked. I worked all day long, like it was a job. I just kept working and working, and I kept getting better. I kept adding layers to my game. And it's like, I'm a very firm believer that majority of people, and especially today, everyone works to some degree.
Right.
But is the work working for you? That's what you have to ask yourself. Is what you're working on, is it working for you? I saw results from what I was doing. I wasn't the kind of guy who woke up at 6 a.m. to go put up jump shots or 500 jump shots, because that shit doesn't matter. It only matters if you make them in a game. So I woke up at 10 and I still did my jump shots. I still did all my work. But then when the game came, I was a gamer. I made shots in the game when it actually matters. So all of those things, I think, gave me the real confidence I needed. And
that's important, because I think this is one of the topics I wanted to touch on, going good to great, but you almost have to be vulnerable as well, and put the ego aside and be like, hey, these are my weaknesses. If I want to get better, this is what I want to get, focus on. Yeah, the 3-pointers are fun, but this is, it's at the key, or, these are what's important in my game that I need to focus on. And that goes across any sport, I think.
Big time. I agree.
So you played in Canada and Europe. What were some big differences between playing professionally in Canada and playing professionally overseas?
This the pace of the game, the intelligence of the game. I think Canada at the time was a developing league, so there was a lot of unprofessionalism in that. Like the housing situation's not the same. It's a lot of off-court stuff is different. Just some of these teams and leagues have been around for decades, you got people who played there, like I played in Spain, and Pau Gasol's first professional game was in the same team I played for, so you got little things like that. Like these teams have been around for a very, very long time. There's a lot of history and culture and a lot of honor that comes on and playing with some of these teams. Even having the jersey is a special thing, so more so here, it's not the same, or the quality of life and the way that the game is taken, and the fans. I mean, you go to a EuroLeague game, most of the fans that are sitting in there are all people who play basketball. They're not your casual fan. Like here in Toronto, you go to a Raptors game, the fans are like, RBC and like other organizations who don't give a shit about basketball. They're just there for the business. But you go to a EuroLeague game, it's like people are in the stands with, flares and flags because their grandfather was the manager of the team, or you know what I mean? It's like there's some sort of lineage and attachment to the team. So when you play for them, they expect 110% effort and passion every game, so big difference.
And I think that's not just basketball, that's across the board. Like you see hockey like that as well. Soccer. I mean, don't even call it soccer over there. You get punched. Football.
Exactly, which is like my favorite sport. So I mean, they're insane when it comes to the support.
And how do the salaries compare to playing in Canada versus over there as well?
Not even close. I mean, I was lucky because I had a name, so I always was able to negotiate not the same amount, but a good amount. Like my first contract overseas, I made 130,000 Canadian. So, nice. And I was 23 years old. That was the most money I had at the time. So that was my first deal. It was good money. Basically what I got paid around like 7,000, 8,000 euros a month, sometimes 10. And then when I would convert that because, in Europe, there's also bonuses and stuff too. So when I would convert that to Canadian, it would basically double. So if I'd send home 6,000, it was 12.
Right. Yeah.
If I sent home 3, it was 6. So, it was good money over there. And then here it's like, you're going to get by, you're going to have enough, but you need to have like I said, I was lucky. When I got here, I already had a name, so they weren't going to pay me what they paid some of the other guys who were getting like 2,500 a month or 3,000 a month. Like I would never play for that.
Right. And so Warren, you had quite a few injuries through your career. How hard is the game of basketball, like the sport of basketball, on your body? I mean, you're running up and down the court. You're jumping at ridiculously heights for human beings, and then just the roughness of the sport. How hard is it on the body?
Well, obviously, in my situation, a lot of my injuries were just freak accidents. I mean, I didn't really find basketball too hard on my body per se, but well, that's kind of a big contradiction because of all the surgeries I've had, but. Most of my injuries were just, like I said, freak accidents. So I think the hardest part is this, getting up and down the floor. When players start doing this a little bit slower, now jumping becomes harder. But when you can do this and you have speed and momentum and you're running, then everything else is good. So the more injuries I had, I used to do this. The more injuries I had, it just turned to this. Exactly. So that's what becomes hard, is the repetition. Like Jordan, you watch LeBron, you watch the real greats, Kobe and the great, like them getting up and down the floor was the easiest part.
Right.
From baseline to baseline, no problem. You can do that for 20 years, 10 years, you'll have a career. Because that's the end of the day, that's what teams are looking for. You got to be able to get up and on the floor, man, and you got to be athletic. So it was hard. Even after injury, I don't feel like I necessarily lost my game or my inability to score, but the half step, the quarter step, all that, I lost that. I lost the ability to get out and really run. And I lost the ability to I could jump off of 2 feet, but not as high off of 1 anymore. And, and then the leg that I tore my ACL on first, I could jump higher off of that leg than I could my other leg, so it was just, all of that really affected my movement. And when your movement gets affected, now your game gets affected. And, you know, I've had 3 major surgeries in 9 years. So I wasn't able to, every time my career was taken off, I had to go back and, like, you know, learn how to walk. And then I recovered from that. Like, the first one was in university, my 4th year. Had I gone play D1, I would have never, like, I would have been done. So luckily I stayed here. I got a 5th year. Then I entered the draft, which was like, you know what? I'm the 3rd Canadian in history to ever do that, or 5th or something like that, to ever enter the draft from here, almost get drafted. But because I did 5 years here, I couldn't. So I had to be a free agent. So that was the first hurdle of adversity. Then I go play 2 more years. I go overseas, Germany, France, come back here, tear my Achilles. And then after the Achilles trap, I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. I come back in 6 months. I'm jumping again, running again. I win Player of the Year in Canada. And then I'm like, you know what? Then I'm like, you know what? I'm not done. Let's go back and play again. I keep playing. And then I go to Spain 2 years later. I'm doing a normal Euro step in January 28th, 2018. I get clipped by a big man who clips me at my hip. My knee goes ACL. I walk off the court, and that's the last time I played a professional game. So, wow, career just went like this. The whole, you know, all 6 years just went like this.
Do you find, we talked about belief earlier in the show, that every injury you had kind of chipped away at that belief and confidence a little bit? Or did you feel like your mental process, you came back stronger?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any doubt. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I had something wrong. Like, when you keep getting injured like that, and it just, like, you put in all the time, you put in the effort, you do all the work. I probably worked a lot differently than most athletes, you know, because I was really meticulous and smart about it. And it keeps happening. You blame yourself. So I was like, I portrayed confidence, but deep down I was a mess. Like, I was I kept going because it's not that I didn't know anything else. I wasn't ready to be okay not having that be my identity anymore.
Right.
I was trapped more so in the identity. And I think that's why I kept getting hurt, because I'm like, now I realize I don't need that to be Warren. You know, I'm still I don't need it to be me. I can still do everything I wanted to do. And in fact, life has kind of showed me that. So I just had to be patient and have the belief to see it without seeing it, as I said earlier, to see things happening and all that stuff. You know, it makes me kind of sometimes a little emotional, but it is what it is. Like, I wish I could have gone and played, because I was good, and I know I would have had a career, and it would have gave me the number one thing I was proud of was just being able to show my family the world. You know, my family came out to Germany, never been to Europe before in their life. Wow. You know, they pour a lot into me so that I could do that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome, man. Hey, I appreciate the vulnerability, and that's an important process, I think, for any athlete to go through, and appreciate you sharing that with us. I had Fred Winters, who's I would say is the GOAT of Canadian volleyball, on the show a few days ago. And he had a 15-year professional career in volleyball. And he talked about, I asked him, I'm like, what did you do to have that length of career? And he said one word. He's like, I was just lucky. And lucky. You know, I think there's an element there for sure. I mean, of just being fortunate to play a longer career, but also be, you know, lucky that you had the successful career you did as well. I mean, despite the injuries, you've, like I said, you can't talk about Canadian basketball without talking about Warren Ward. And that's
appreciate that. And one of my best friends actually said something to me, and he, you know, every time I was struggling with the injuries, he would be like, it's the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to wait. It's the best thing that is. He lives 6 floors above me. He said it's the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to wait. And, you know, I started to read a little bit more, and it's like, you know, I like I said, at the time I was just kind of scared to figure out what I would be like and without it. But after a while, besides my family, like I got hurt a couple weeks before my family was going to come to Spain. So they had to cancel all their flights. And I think that kind of killed me a bit more. My mom always wanted to go to Spain. So when I was able to play there, it was like, yeah, I could get to play, but my family gets to come. My parents get to see, because they pour so much into me. You know what I mean? My sisters get to come and see a different part of the world that they have no, like I've gotten to travel only from basketball, not from, so it'd have been nice for them to go ahead and see that, but I wasn't lucky enough to go ahead and do that. But it is, you got to get lucky, man. There's no rhyme or reason why I've had more surgery in one body than some athletes do in their career.
It's true. It's true though, right? Yeah. Okay, man. Last thing I want to kind of talk about here before we get into some fun stuff and start comparing some greats. So you're one of the biggest names in Canadian professional basketball. We missed the NBA. Sound like by a little bit. What would it have taken for you to get there? For you to follow the Tristan Thompsons and those guys that went on to play?
Well, I would have had to have a different whole trajectory. I would have had to go from high school to play D1, which I didn't do. I would have had to go.
Okay, so that's an important. I want to just stop you there. So do you think that's the path a Canadian basketball player has to take? Like, if you want to go to the NBA, yeah.
They shouldn't, but it is. Yeah. That's why the majority of the Canadians, they didn't play here. They all played D1 somehow. They went to prep school, whatever. They all played D1 and then they go to the league. I was trying to get it from here. But after 4 years, your name gets put in the draft. So my draft class was 2012. I entered in 2013. So I was ineligible to be drafted.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
And why do you think that is, Warren? Like, that's the path? Is it just they put that much more coaching, the level of caliber of ball into D1?
I think,
or you just get noticed.
I think the caliber is much different, but that's why it's like that's the feeder system to the NBA is college. So if you're a Canadian, you got to go play there to prove that you're better than the kids that are American now in college, and then you get selected. Everyone was just like, the competition I'm playing against wasn't good enough. So because the competition here, they didn't respect it. Now I get labeled as someone who probably isn't good enough. That's the same way with like playing D1. But like I said, I was a big fish in a small pond. So when I did go down to the States and I did play against those guys and I dominated them, now, like, what can you say? Right. It's just, they don't respect the level of competition, but I don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't spend the time and build up my confidence here. Had I gone D1, you get recruited over every year if you're not a standout. You're fighting for your spot. So all those things they play a factor into it.
And winning really becomes a habit, and the confidence to it. I mean, if you can dominate here, right, and or at a high school level, and then you could dominate at a university level, well, you have that confidence that continues to carry you. Where if you're always, top 5, top 6, you just kind of get used to being top 5 everywhere you go.
Yeah. And I think the hardest part about being a professional is not like, I always thought I was going to get there, but how do you stay? That's the one question, right? Like you all these kids want to go to the NBA, and then what? Like, that's not the hard part. The hard part is staying in the NBA. The hard part is knowing that you got the best in the world coming in every single top 60 coming in so 60 got to come in, which means 60 got to go.
Right.
And so every year you gotta be on your shit and make sure that you are one of the people that get to stay. So I think that mentally that's what's so degrading. You work your whole life to get to this league and then find out that you're not good enough.
Right.
Like, it'll kind of suck, Yeah. So that was never my dream though. My dream was just to make a shit ton of money playing basketball. That was it. Where I did that didn't really matter.
Didn't care. Just
didn't care.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I'll throw a stat at you here. Has anyone ever gone from the NBL of Canada to the NBA?
CEBL, not the NBL. At least I don't think so. No.
All right. Okay, man. Here's where we get to have some fun. Who we're gonna settle this. Warren Ward is gonna settle this for us. Who is the real GOAT? LeBron, Kobe, or Jordan?
Um, well, I mean, I'm biased. Like you see what's on my wall here. I don't
He's a legend.
The real GOAT's Jordan. The real GOAT's Jordan, though. Jordan is the one who 13 years led the league in scoring like 6 times, never lost in the finals. The point of the sport is to win. It's not for stats. So if we're going to talk about who the GOAT is, LeBron has never won a championship outside of his super teams. Great player. I think LeBron is the best athlete to play basketball, but he's not the best basketball player. I don't think in 10 years, people will be doing what LeBron's game is based upon athleticism. It's not based upon like actual skill. Like, I can turn on a TV and watch people emulate Kobe and Jordan and their moves because that's the game. No one can emulate LeBron, and that's not a knock on LeBron. That's just his greatness.
Right.
But in terms of to say that he's the best basketball player overall without looking at inflated numbers, I can't. I mean, if you look at we're gonna get a little technical here, Trapper. But
all right, let's go.
If you do the math and look at, let's just say LeBron, the average NBA superstar gets to the free throw line like 9 times a game, and or maybe 6 times a game. You can watch you can watch the replay, and some of those foul calls are not fouls per se, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say we watch the replay and someone's going to the line because they're a superstar. They get 6 free throws, just like handed to them. So that's 6 attempts at the line they didn't earn. So 6 times 82 games is 492. Times 492 by 20, you got 9,840. Now I bet out of the 38,000 points LeBron has scored, 9,000 or more have come from absolute bullshit. Free throws he didn't earn, points he didn't earn. And that just goes to KD, Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, et cetera, et cetera. And do you know why? Because the NBA is based on entertainment. It's not based upon actual game. When you see Jordan playing and he's getting beat up and Kobe playing like real basketball where you could actually hand check someone, you can't touch a guy now. So maybe my hypothesis is a bit off, but I actually do believe that's why you see all these young players in the NBA. He's the youngest to score 5,000 points and he's 22 years old. He's the youngest to score, 6,000 points or 20,000 points. And it's like, he's 32 years old. I'm not taking away from everyone's ability to score. I am saying that it's the scoring and the numbers are influenced, where at another time they were more pure, where the referees didn't influence the number of free throws. Like Luka scoring 60, 20 rebounds and 15 assists in a game. Like, you know how many points that is? Like if an assist is worth 2 points, he just scored 75 points by himself. Like that's nuts. But that's the game today. So I personally don't think you can be the greatest when there's so many holes and flaws. Like Jordan is unanimously to me the best, and Kobe's second, because I feel like the reason why I like Kobe so much is because he did the most with the least. And that's what he has the smallest hands out of the 3 of them. He's the least athletic out of the 3 of them. There's so many other things that I could say that Kobe didn't have working for him, and somehow, some way, his way, he's amongst those people. And the analysts and the other people will tell you he's not top 10, but they didn't play basketball. You ask anyone who's actually played, anyone who knows anything about the game that actually played the game, which is why I do what I do now, they'll tell you that he is. And I don't need people to say that. I know he is. I have the man tattooed on my arm for a reason. I know, but to me, that's what separates those people. It's like I'll watch the game and I'll see people's footwork, and it's just like his. It's and to me that is where greatness comes in. Like, what are you playing for? Are we playing for stats? Are we playing to win? And sometimes even when I played, like I didn't always play to necessarily win. I wanted the outcome, but sometimes my individual moments were better. And as I got older, you realize it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning. And I think Jordan and Kobe affect winning so much more. Like you look at LeBron's rings, they came at super teams. They didn't come on his own. He got to the finals 10 times. Hats off. I mean, I'm not knocking or discrediting that. when you say you're the greatest ever, last time I checked, getting to the finals is not a championship.
Right.
You have to win. You have to. That's the point of the sport. You have to win. So, great player, but my order is very simple. It's Jordan, Kobe, Bron, and then everybody else.
Well, I would agree with you. I think Jordan also because of the growth in the game that he influenced. I mean, it's you read Tim Grover's book Winning, and he talks about the differences between Kobe and Jordan. Jordan literally couldn't go anywhere. Like he could not go anywhere without being swarmed. Like Kobe didn't have that. Jordan's influence, I think, in that era on the game, I think was huge. And then Kobe, I mean, will always have a special place in my heart just because not only what he did on the course, but also how he left us. But his work ethic, I think, was just crazy. And I agree with you. LeBron's a freak of nature when it comes to being athleticism. But yeah, I would put it in that same order. Okay, here's question number 2. We're gonna throw at you is the Bulls in their prime with Jordan versus the Lakers in their prime. We'll say with Kobe and Shaq. Who NBA Finals? Who wins?
Oh man, which Chicago team? Like 90, 92, 93, or the one after later on?
Well, I'll say later on. I think the last 3 they won. I feel like they were stronger all around.
I'm gonna still go with Jordan.
Yeah,
with Jordan. Even though Shaq would have a field day, I just think Kobe wasn't old enough to compete with Jordan at that level. I think Jordan would have gave him fits. I think the Tony Koo coaches and Scottie Pippen would have also had major influence, but it'd be close. It'd be 4-3, maybe 4-2. It'd be close. It wouldn't be a blowout. Like, they're not dominating each other. Like Shaq was a problem back, and no one in the history of the league could guard Shaq. Nobody.
You imagine Rodman Shaq though matchup?
It'd be nuts.
It'd be nuts.
Yeah, it'd be nuts. But Shaq is Shaq. Yeah.
So Warren, what do you feel that great players just do better than everyone else? If you kind of had to pick like a top 2 things that they do better than everyone else, what is it?
Attention to detail. They can separate and see things that other people cannot see or are unwilling to see. Whether that would be spots on the floor or their preparation is just different than someone else's. And then winning. They value winning. Winning comes first. They affect winning. You want to talk about a good player and a great player, they affect winning. I think that's most important, man. Like that's the outcome. What are we playing for here? Like whether that's a card game or anything on a team, how well do you affect winning? I think there's so many, even in a organization, when talk about like a good employee, does your presence and the business, do you affect the outcome of the business? Is the company making more money because you're just there? You know what I mean? Like you just running down the floor. How do you affect winning? What's the outcome here? And I think that's what really good players and people do. They affect the outcome.
I love that. I wrote that down. I like that, affect winning. So you got a young player wants to play pro basketball. What's Warren Ward tell him to what path, what advice, what do you tell him to get to playing pro ball?
Well, the path is going to write itself. I'm not going to tell them anything. Everyone has their own path of which they're going to walk, regardless of whether I tell them something or not. So the path is there. They have a choice. They made a choice to do something. I'll tell them to be consistent. That's number one. You got to be consistent in your effort. You got to be consistent in your attention to the game and how much you pour into the game. Like when I was young, I missed parties to go play outside in my driveway and, know what you want and also have the confidence. I think if I have children, that's one thing. And my children play sports. They're going to be no shortage of confidence. I'm going to tell them that you want to play in the NBA? No, you can play above the NBA. If there's a league above the NBA, you should be playing in that league. Like forget the NBA. The NBA is small. They're going to have so much confidence. They can think they can play in the moon. there's a moon on, there's a league on the moon.
Yeah.
They should go play there.
Yeah.
That type of thing is, you got to have the confidence, and then, and the belief, and also at the same time, learn, be ready to learn. You're going to be on a lifelong journey, and there's so much stuff I take from basketball and apply to my, my daily life. So be a lifelong learner.
That's good. Yeah. That's not just basketball. That's life. Good advice there.
Yeah.
Okay, man, I want to wrap up here, and I want to kind of get into, I mean, you touched on what you're most proud of with your family, and I appreciate that. You got emotional and vulnerable. But what are you most proud of? What's your most proud accomplishment actually on the court? What are you most proud of that stands out?
Just playing for Canada, I think, was the number one thing for me. It's something I always wanted to do. Big dream of mine, to have a jersey that said my name, my parents' my last name, and the maple leaf on the front, knowing that there's 12 of us to get to do it, in the whole country, 38 million people, 12 of us get to do it. So for me to be one of those people and have my name there, probably that's the number one thing, I think, for me. So
it's different playing for your country versus playing for money.
Oh yeah, no. There's no amount of you can't buy that. You can buy your way into a team. You can pay for a tryout if you want to, but you got to be selected to play for Canada. And I think just having that jersey and it just, it meant a lot. I remember the day I called my dad and I told him I was running down the street and I was jumping up and down in the air on the phone.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Last question. I read this on an interview you did, but you said ball is life, but life is not ball. Tell me what that means.
Well, I mean, I'm always going to have a place for basketball to be a part of my life, always, but you just realize that there's so much more outside of the sport. Once you're able to really let it go, like I let it go and it's still providing for me. It still provides a life. So life is not ball. Like I don't need it to feel good about myself.
That's good.
Life isn't like my life is bigger than just basketball. So, like before, I think I needed it in order to feel like I had purpose, feel like I was important, and all the other insecure stuff that we have. But after a while, you just realize it'd be nice, but I don't need it. End of the day, if Jordan stopped dribbling, I'm gonna have to too. You don't get to play forever, so it's not. There's so much more you can do in life.
I love that, man. I want to commend you on your career, the influence you've had. I always love talking to other basketball players, and your name comes up and they just light up because you've had such an influence on the game. And I've been fortunate enough to call you a friend for quite a while now. And
a couple years.
It's good. And seeing what you're doing now, man, broadcasting and the way you speak with maturity and talk about the game and still promote the game. Man, I really appreciate you.
Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure, seriously, knowing you, and we met randomly and I'm glad we did. I always thought you had the coolest name in the world, Trapper Goldsmith.
Yeah.
So someone I'll never forget. And you've always been very kind and a patient person, so we haven't worked together yet, but that day's going to come soon. So
appreciate that.
Very much for having me on your podcast. It means a lot.
People either remember my name or they remember the hair. One of them stands
out. Both.
Okay, brother, I'm going to jump us off live here and then we'll wrap up.
Sounds good, man.
Appreciate you.
All right.